Today I'm going to be taking a look at the process of setting up a debt management plan. Of course, before I delve in, it's important that you understand a debt management plan is not right for everybody. Just like any debt solution, there's pros and cons that you need to weigh up. We've got loads of videos on the channel where we go through some of the specifics, so be sure to check those out before you get into a debt management plan. But let's jump into the 5 steps that you need to take out a debt management plan. Firstly, you need to work out what kinds of debts that you have. Are they priority debts or are they non-priority debts? Priority debts are the most important types of debts. They're considered to be the ones that cause the most serious problems if you don't pay them back. They'll include things like rent arrears, mortgage debts, council tax, phone and electricity bills, and more. In fact, it's vital that you look up a list of all of the priority debts to see which ones apply to you. Any debts that aren't priority debts are considered as non-priority debts. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't worry about them, it just means that they don't cause such serious problems. Non-priority debts are things like credit card debts, parking tickets, payday loans. Again, it's worth your time looking up the list of these. The reason you need to know is because debt management plans do not cover priority debts. That means you can't set up a debt management plan to pay off secured loans, council tax arrears, or anything else that's on that priority list. So if you only have priority debts, then a debt management plan won't work for you. However, if your debt is non-priority or it's a mixture of both, then you can still set up a debt management plan. The caveat here is that if you have both non-priority and priority debts, then you'll have to do a little bit of maths. As I've said before, because your priority debts are not covered by the plan, they'll need to be paid off separately and before the non-priority debts that the plan covers. You'll need to work out how much money you earn, your expenses, and the total cost of the payment towards the priority debts. Any money that you have left over after all of that can be used in your debt management plan to tackle the non-priority debts. Don't worry if you do the calculations and find out there isn't really much money left to pay into the debt management plan. That just means it might be best off looking into a different way of paying off your debt. But if you do have a reasonable sum left over after your priority debts are covered, then it's time to move on to step 2, deciding if it's a really good idea. Debt management plans are not a perfect debt solution. In fact, the perfect debt solution doesn't exist. There's plenty of pros and cons to debt management plans, and there's plenty of good reasons why you should avoid one, even if you have completed step 1 and you know that they could work for you. For most people, there's 2 main things that you need to consider. Firstly, would you rather pay off your debts as quickly as possible, or as a steady monthly payment plan approach? This is really important as other debt solutions like filing for bankruptcy or preparing a full and final settlement offer can be a much faster way of wiping off your debt. Debt management plans are the opposite end of the spectrum. They're less extreme and are often stretched over a longer period of time. With most debt management plans, you'll end up paying back less each month to your creditors, making your life a little bit easier, but the low repayments means that you'll be paying off debts for longer. Secondly, it's important to consider whether you want a solution that's legally binding. Debt management plans are not legally binding, which means 2 things. It means that the creditors are not bound to them and they can still contact you even after you agree to the plan. And, most importantly, you're not bound to them either, so you can adjust it or stop it if you want to. There's other ways that you can tackle debt that are legally binding. They're forms of insolvency like IVAs or debt relief orders or bankruptcy. Each of these offer different things because they're legally binding. For example, with an IVA, your creditors can't contact you after the IVA begins. The flip side is that it's legally binding as well, so you simply can't stop it. You have to keep up those payments every month. You need to weigh up how important this is to you. If hearing from your creditors all the time is causing you stress and that's the main problem that you want fixed, then a debt management plan might not sort that out. But equally, if you want the flexibility to alter the plan and pull out in the future, then a plan like a debt management plan gives you more flexibility than a legally binding agreement like an IVA. Those are just 2 of the big factors. There are more things to consider, and we've gone into more detail in other videos. Things like your credit report, your interest charges, and the actual cost. So don't jump in without doing more research. Step number 3 is choosing the provider. Debt management plans are a bit special in the world of debt solutions. Unlike others, they can cost money or be free. And they can be set up by a provider, or you can even do them yourself. We'll keep this section short because I've got videos of some of my favourite providers which I'll link to in the description, as well as other videos on how to set up your own plan if that's something that you're interested in doing. There's 2 decisions that you need to make. Do you want to set up a debt management plan alone, or do you want a provider to help? And if you do want a provider to help, do you go with a free one or a paid one? If you do decide to go with a provider that charges a fee, then that fee will be included in your monthly repayments, so the payment plan will last a little longer. Which does beg the question, why would you pay for a debt management plan if you can get one for free? Well, the companies that charge a fee would argue that they give a better service than the free alternatives. They'd also point out because they're paid directly by you, then they're going to be working in your best interest. Whilst the free providers are normally paid by credit card companies and banks, so they might not have the same motivation. Of course, it's not really provable whether the free providers are any worse than the paid ones, so I'd suggest you read plenty of reviews and chat to a couple of them before picking one. As I said, I have a video covering my top providers which I'll link to in the description. Once you know who is setting up your debt management plan, you'll need to work out your monthly budget. If you followed the steps, you'll already have some rough calculations in step 1. Now it's time to get into the details. The good news is that you don't have to do this step alone. If you've picked a provider, they'll work with you to determine how much you can afford to pay back each month. You'll need to use your bank statements, your pay slips, and creditors' statements to help you and your provider work out how much you have left on your non-priority debts. Remember, they'll first work out how much you need to live on, how much you need to pay back towards your priority debts before suggesting a figure for your debt management plan. As a side note, if you've chosen to set up a plan alone and not use a provider, then I'd suggest you watch through my video on how to set up a debt management plan alone. Working out your budget and what you need to do to pay back monthly is the most important step of the process, so you need to get that right. Now, step 5 covers the most important obstacle in setting up your debt management plan. We'll pretend that you've covered all of the steps before and you've got your budget that you're happy and comfortable with, and now it's time to write to your creditors with a payment offer. You and your provider will need to present a payment structure to your creditors to see if they'll accept it. There's no guarantees that the creditors will agree to what you present, so you need to make it as attractive as possible. That means proving to them that through your budget that they're being paid as much as you can afford and they won't be losing out. You need to strike a balance between what you want and what they want. It's also important that you discuss interest charges and how they'll impact your payments. So make sure to bring this up with your debt management plan provider before they present the payment plan to your creditors. Some creditors will be happy to freeze interest charges, but not all of them. And it's really important that you're aware of what you and your creditors are agreeing to, so you don't get any nasty surprises when you start the debt management plan. Now it's all out of your hands. The creditor will decide whether to accept or reject your proposal. If they agree, then you'll be put onto the plan and the payments begin. If they reject it, then sadly you'll be back to square one. But of course that doesn't mean that you can't tackle your debt. We've got an entire channel here dedicated to helping people break free of their debt and achieving financial freedom. It might well be that you qualify for a different kind of debt solution that you didn't know about. I've got a little calculator linked in the description that will help you work out what the best debt solution is for you. After using the calculator, if you do qualify, you'll be able to find out more about it. So click the link in the description and go and check that out now. If you want to continue learning more about personal finance and getting out of debt, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.